Hello from the barista course in Hamburg. May I introduce Gisela in version 0.1, our very first self-built machine as a dual circuit with an E61 brew group. And what it's all about and why we have a few more things standing here, we'll show you in a moment, because we claim that Gisela is the fastest heating machine with an E61 brew group that has been built so far. And we will show you this live so you can see that we are probably right. Enjoy it. Before we get to our test, perhaps a few pieces of information about Gisela, why and how it came to be. Actually, we just wanted to free a machine a bit from its casing or open the casing and show what it looks like inside such a machine. For this purpose, we bought a used machine and had a very nasty surprise with it. I'll show you the pictures here of what the machine looked like inside. I have never seen such a calcified machine in my entire life. This machine was sold to us on eBay as a functioning machine in good condition. And when we received it, it didn't even turn on because the inflow to the brewing unit was completely calcified. Not a single drop of water came through. We didn't really mind because we wanted to overhaul the machine anyway and polish it a bit so that our participants could see how such a machine is constructed. After we opened the casing and dismantled it a bit, we said to ourselves, well, it doesn't look that exciting somehow. We had to do something, and we wanted to build our own casing, our own framework for this machine. And I have the impression that we got a bit carried away, and the result is now here. Of course, we wanted to optimize it a bit more. We wanted a shot timer for it. It is installed up here. In principle, you can retrofit such a shot timer to your machines if you don't have one. It's super simple to do. You can actually do this with all machines. You don't need any technical knowledge for it. There are various shot timers available for purchase on eBay and eBay classifieds, which you can use to retrofit your machines. We sourced ours from Custom Printery in Berlin. I'll link their website for you. We've already sourced several shot timers from them. And the interesting thing is you can also customize it a bit. You might already know our restoration video about the BFC ELA. We will also retrofit a shot timer there, specifically one with an integrated thermometer, where we will try to measure the temperature of the water flowing into the brew group to determine what temperature actually reaches the bottom. And then we were still missing a pressure gauge to check the brewing pressure. A boiler pressure gauge was there. We retrofitted this other pressure gauge. That's actually not a problem and technically not very demanding either. What else did we do? We installed a small barista light, and of course we retrofitted our Geisinger thermometer. We also had to consider how to regulate the water supply. For this, we have now taken a glass cylinder from which we draw the water. And additionally, the excess or the water from the overpressure goes into this glass cylinder so that it doesn't run over our hot parts. We also retrofitted a quieter pump. This is also not technically demanding at all. Anyone can do this on their machine. Maybe you have very, very loud vibration pumps. And as you will soon hear, there are quite quiet vibration pumps. For aesthetic reasons, we also built a drip tray ourselves and equipped it with a float. And even before we made the knobs with a lathe that we specifically bought, we had already made a leveler, although still with a belt sander. That's why it didn't turn out quite perfect, but since the machine is somewhat raw, we thought it would fit just fine. And in the same way, we made this tamper, and since we had already made those two things, we thought, well, then we might as well have a portafilter handle made of olive wood. We got a portafilter from Lalette here because I like that it tapers from the front. And we also made the portafilter handle a bit differently because, as I mentioned, we didn't have the lathe at that time. That's why we had to improvise a bit, but I think we ended up with a very nicely ergonomic handle because we flattened the surface, and as you can see, we left a small bump here, a little thickening, and it fits wonderfully in the hand. So I think it's better than any round portafilter, at least in my opinion. Since we were already on a roll, we thought, what is the most annoying thing about E61 machines? And that is, of course, the heating time. Such a machine takes on average 25 to 30 minutes each to fully heat up until the brew group is heated through, so that we can pull our first espresso. Recently, we had already released a video on this topic, specifically a test of the Synchronika II from ECM, which actually manages to be hot enough in 6.5 minutes that after a 25-second flush, you can prepare your coffee grounds and then pull your first espresso. Yes, and we thought, well, if they can do it, maybe we can too. And to be honest, we approached it a bit naively. Our problem, of course, is that we don't have the technical capabilities and resources to replicate what ECM did, because ECM actually drilled holes into the brew group and inserted heating elements into these holes, which allows the brew group to heat up very, very quickly. And then we thought about how we could solve the whole thing ourselves. As mentioned, we couldn't or didn't dare to drill holes into the brew group. So we had to do everything from the outside. We then took a copper block and attached it to the brew group. This wasn't easy either, because we also didn't dare to drill threads into the brew group to secure the copper block there. We had to search for a long time to find a way to securely connect this copper block to the brew group. And in this copper block, we then inserted 2 heating rods along with an additional thermometer, so we could test how hot this copper block gets and then determine how hot the brew group might be. After we turned on our machine with these heating rods for the first time, I must admit, the result was somewhat disappointing. We were quite frustrated because even though we put 200 more watts of power into this brew group, our Gisela, it took about 15 minutes to reach 92 degrees. So far from the 6.5 minutes of the ECM, I have to say, I'm not an engineer. I come from a completely different background. And this is really the very first machine that I have personally built myself. So naturally, I had to learn quite a bit more about building the machine. We have already spent a lot of time dealing with technology, talking to technicians and discussing temperature, brewing groups, etc. But of course, that's something different than actually building a machine yourself. So what was the reason? As I said, we were a bit frustrated and wondered why our machine is taking so long now. The first thing that became clear to us was that we have a heat exchanger machine, and ECM used a dual boiler. If you look at the Rocket Giotto Fast, for example, they also take about 13 minutes to reach the right temperature. Ultimately, it makes perfect sense because when I use a dual boiler, I naturally have the ability to heat the extraction water much faster and even overheat it, reaching the desired temperature more quickly. With a heat exchanger system, unfortunately, it's different because in a heat exchanger, the water flows through a tube. In the steam boiler, and as it passes through, the water is heated, which naturally takes much longer. And then we also had the problem that everything is open, nothing is sealed. This means that the temperature of the boiler is lost much faster than in machines that are sealed. But somehow, we couldn't just accept that, and we thought there must be a way to additionally heat the extraction water. And it took a very long time until we found a way to achieve exactly that. Another problem we fundamentally had with the machine was that it was much too hot. Even without our heating elements and without the additional heater, it reached a temperature of 100 degrees in the extraction water. That is, of course, much too hot. This meant that we first had to think about how to cool down the machine itself, how to bring the water to a temperature of about 92 degrees. And how we solved the whole thing, we will show you in a separate video if you are interested. Write in the comments whether this is interesting for you or not, because we have often found that the machines deliver water that is much too hot. Recently we had another machine, it was a Lilith Mara X. I was quite surprised because we also have one, but the latest version, and this was an intermediate version, it reached a temperature of about 98, 99 degrees. Most, or actually probably for all types of espresso, that's much too hot. And there are various ways to lower the temperature of the machine. Because the problem with the whole situation is that even with a flush, I don't find it practical to solve, since you need about a 30-second flush to even somewhat bring it down from those 99 degrees. As mentioned, that was our first step. So we first had to lower the overall temperature of the machine, then later use our additional heater to heat the brew group and preheat the water in such a way that we become significantly faster than 15 minutes. Shortly before we implemented our idea of the additional heating of the extraction water, we talked to a technician about it, and they were very, very skeptical about whether it would work. We did it anyway, and lo and behold, we were extremely surprised. It worked. In the first test, we had already reduced the time from 15 minutes to 8 minutes, and then I must admit it was quite a complicated game between the boiler temperature, the temperature we introduce into the brew group, and the temperature we introduce into the extraction water. We then really took a very, very long time to get this interplay between the normal boiler temperature, the heating of the brew group, and the additional heating for the extraction water under control, so that we could achieve a reasonable and consistent temperature even in subsequent tests. That is, during the regular test we conduct with all machines. That was really super complicated and very, very labor intensive. The great thing about it is we started with 8 minutes, realized it works, and then we thought, well, let's just try it with 4 minutes. And we managed that too. We really managed to reach 92, I think, 92.7 degrees after 4 minutes with an additional 25-second flush. The problem, however, was that afterwards we had a much too high temperature, and unfortunately we couldn't adjust it with our means. So we tried it with 5 minutes, and that really worked out great. For those interested in seeing our 4-minute test, we have published it in our members area. What we found in all our tests is that the initial temperature of the machine, meaning how cold the metal is, how cold or warm the water is, makes a huge difference. In our workshop where we built the machine, it's usually around 18 degrees. And it was really very, very difficult to reach 92 degrees within those 5 minutes. But 18 degrees is not a normal temperature for a household. That means we looked for an environment that is around 20 to 22 degrees, so an average room temperature, to test it under normal conditions. For example, we found that if the machine has a base temperature of around 18 degrees, it takes up to 2 or 3 minutes longer to reach our target temperature of approximately 92 degrees. We have left Gisela here for 24 hours and are now checking what temperature it has. We have just freshly supplied the water. Unfortunately, it's a bit colder, but that's still okay. That's now, I don't know if you can see it, 19.6 degrees. We will track the whole process with the Geisinger thermometer and our measuring portafilter. And it's also important that we have a measuring portafilter that not only achieves a flow rate of 45 grams per 25 seconds, we have installed a valve here with which we can regulate the flow of our portafilter so that during the first flush, we really have the full flow of the pump, because we need that to further heat up the brew group, especially in the front areas here. After we have done the first flush, we will close the valve so that we only have about 45 grams per 25 seconds, which is roughly what you would normally have in a cup. We will, of course, record the whole process, especially the curve progression and the temperature progression. Additionally, we are also interested in how much electricity we consume. We haven't tested this at all so far. This is basically the premiere today. And let's see how much we really consume until we can draw our first espresso. We will, of course, conduct the whole process according to our standard protocol. This means we first have the heating time specified by the manufacturer. Then the flush time also specified by the manufacturer. And then we will start our first extraction after the preparation of the coffee puck. All right, let's get started and hope that everything works out. First of all, I'll turn on our power meter so that we have electricity. Then I want to record here so that we can show it to you later. Then you can also see the curve progression.
Then let's turn on our Geisinger thermometer. We have 21.1 degrees and 21.6 on our measuring carrier. I'll check the water temperature again. Still 19.6 degrees. Yes then, let's just give it a try. I turn it on over here. We have set up different cameras so you can see what's happening. And now let's see how the whole thing behaves. Everything seems to be running. I can already hear the first sound. So it's not that easy to build something like this. You have to consider a few things. It's not entirely without risk, especially with these additional heating rods. A big thank you to Max von Maro, because I discussed the whole topic with him a bit. And he tells me, just be careful. In our initial tests and experiments, we melted a brewing unit. And I'm grateful for that, because you might soon see from the other camera up there how the whole thing starts to glow. And if you overdo it, you could probably really melt it, because these heating rods are incredibly hot. And we naturally have a difference between the measuring device here in the brewing unit and the portafilter, because that's quite a distance, quite a significant part of the way that needs to be heated. And of course, the element that sits all the way at the back can't do that quite as quickly. That's why there will be a larger difference now, and we will try to compensate for that with a flush, a 25-second flush, so that we hopefully reach our 92 degrees on our first extraction. Let's see what happens. Is there anything else to talk about? No, I would say we just wait and see how it develops. And it's rising relatively quickly, as you can see. Now we are already at 30 degrees and we have reached 2 minutes and 17 seconds. Now you can clearly see the difference between the temperature in the brew group, meaning exactly in the water channel, and the area that is here in front of below the shower, because that's where the thermometer for the portafilter is located. We have it open. Maybe I should put something underneath. Let's take something like this. I hope that's enough. That might be cutting it close. Yes, everything is okay. We've almost reached 33 and are already at 45 degrees. I can already check how the power consumption is. We have used 0.13 kilowatt hours so far. Looks good. We are already at 53 degrees. So far, we've always reached about 60 to 62 degrees on the Geisinger thermometer after about 5 minutes, and 42, 43 degrees in the portafilter. We should probably achieve that today as well. I have it played on my video monitor so that I can see it, because from this position it's always a bit difficult. 66 degrees already. 15 seconds left. Attention. 4, 3, 2, 1, and 25 seconds. Flush. Now I have to take a look. I don't have the position now. 11. So 25 seconds reference. Now we'll leave it in for another 15 seconds. The portafilter, yes. I need to take that out. And now it comes out and stays out for approximately 45 seconds. So 10 more seconds. I'll already start turning our reducer. Stop. 1, 2, 3. So this position is of course not very fortunate. So, and now let's take a look. Now we need to adjust so that we have approximately 45 grams in our cup. And, oh, we're even too hot. 94 degrees just at the peak. So, we did it. We probably could have reached a temperature of 92 degrees in just 4 minutes with this setting. Wonderful. This might even be a world record. I don't know. No idea. Yes, so it works. It works. You can heat up such brewing groups quickly. It's still a bit too hot for us. We will adjust it down. That means we won't activate the heating elements for as long. And afterwards, we will of course show you a regular test. We will insert it here shortly. That means we will do it afterwards and also show you how much energy we consumed. Up to the first espresso shot, I can already say we have used 0.228 kilowatt hours. This is an absolutely regular normal value for a machine with a 61 brewing group, and we will see how this develops over the entire test cycle. Regarding power consumption, with the fast heat-up machines, we actually consume just as much electricity up to our first espresso as with a machine that needs half an hour to heat up. The only advantage, of course, is that we can say, okay, a machine that only takes 5 minutes to heat up can be turned off during the day and not left running. But now, I must say, it's time for a first espresso. And for that, we'll use our regular portafilter. We'll take this away for now. This is our very first espresso that I'm drinking with this machine. That means we'll heat up our portafilter a bit so that it's warm enough, and then we'll quickly go up to our espresso grinder and do a test. So, onto the premiere with Gisela. I'm excited. Of course, we're using all our new tools. Looks great, fits. Very nice. We'll also put a puck screen on top just to be safe. These are our new espresso cups that we have here and are using. They are particularly thick-walled and therefore retain the heat extremely well. I've already preheated them. Super. This already looks excellent, what I have here in the cup.
I don't know if you can see that. Of course, we take a spoon with it to our first espresso. Super. Fantastic. Really fantastic. It's, yes, incredibly delicious. Incredibly delicious. It is, of course, an old machine. It does have a disadvantage, of course. I'm going to drink the second one right away. It has a disadvantage. Namely, it is not insulated. That means neither the boiler is insulated. We don't have a casing, of course. That means it loses heat very quickly. And I'm curious to see how our regular test will turn out. In the previous test, I sometimes had the impression that it fluctuates a bit. As mentioned, this is because it loses heat everywhere. If we were to insulate the whole thing, we could keep it even more stable. That would be optimal, of course, but since it is supposed to be a demonstration object, that naturally doesn't work. It would have been optimal to use a machine that is a bit more temperature stable. I'm thinking, for example, of the ECM Synchronika Max, which is incredibly stable with the flash advisor. If we had retrofitted it like that, it would have been a dream. But I also think of the Lilith Mara X, for example. It is incredibly stable. We've had it for a while in versions 1 and 2, and especially the second one is very, very temperature stable. If we had built this machine from the Lilith or the ECM, then that would probably be the absolute optimum. Let's see what else develops, what ideas we come up with, because as you can see, this is version 0. 1, and maybe there will soon be a version 02. I wish you a delicious espresso. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time. Wow.